Right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Connect the Dots, entering our second season. Reminder to self and any AI bots that are recording this, we need some intro theme music. We'll follow up. But thanks to everyone who's taken a moment on their Tuesday to listen in. This is a web tech talk show, and the idea behind this is we wanted to create a half an hour every couple of weeks where we could have kind of safe space or open discussion around web tech. I'm the founder at Dotfusion, and we've been building digital products for over 20 years. And we spend most of our time trying to keep up with technology platforms, frameworks, and the like. And we do this to kind of share what's new, but also to create a space where anyone can ask us anything, and we'll do the best we can to give you good answers. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But every couple of weeks, we have a special guest that represents some keen insight and expertise in and around the digital realm, from platforms and platform partners and agencies. Today, we're going to focus specifically around digital delivery. A lot of our topics and themes from last season were around different platforms. We got a bunch of cool stuff coming this year with vendor kind of demo days and stuff. We'll keep you informed as to how that unfolds. But we have a special guest today, also one of the partners here at Dotfusion, Janice Lee, who leads communications and customer success. And we were thinking that not only is it really important to talk a little bit about methodologies and the systems that move projects from start to finish, but also get some different voices here from the team. So Janice, welcome, and thanks for joining, and maybe just introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm excited to be here, and I've been with Dotfusion probably for the last 4 years. As Chris mentioned, I'm a partner in customer success, account delivery, and the main thing is I say, like, I'm, kind of a steward for client happiness and making satisfaction. But when Chris asked me to join this talk today and talk about, what do you want to talk about? I thought, well, there's been a lot of great discussion around platforms and technology, and I would say the hard stuff behind digital delivery. And I really wanted to get into a different topic. So, Chris, I don't know when you want to tee it up, or do you want me to just get into that?
Yeah, let's jump right in. Just want to give a shout out to everyone that's tuning in. Thanks for listening in. We've got a great team, Natalie and Marie, behind the scenes that produce the show, and they're kind of monitoring different social channels. So if you have any questions, feel free to put something in comment boxes, and we'll do our best to respond. But maybe, Janice, I know we were chatting about like different topics for the season. Maybe just talk a little bit more about why you wanted to kind of get into this, because this is where you spend most of your time, and it is kind of the unsung part of a successful delivery of a large digital project, be it a mobile app or a website or a big thing that needs a lot of people and a lot of time. What were you thinking, and why did you think this was so important?
Sure, I can get into that. And I'll preface by saying that this is kind of a part that I'm really passionate about, because it involves the people side of technology, which I think is often maybe a little bit understated in the success of a project. And really, as we talk about large enterprise projects, especially the ones we work on, you're going on projects that are probably going to last the better part of 6 months to a year. Technology, yes, is now, I think, table stakes in the success of any project, and how successfully it's been architectured, how it's been thought through. What isn't often talked about in detail, or maybe proactively addressed, is why it's important to have clear communication, what it means to have good communication and delivery, accountability as part of this whole process. And that's the thing that I really wanted to focus on, because good or bad, we've had some great successes when it's come to clearly communicating and doing delivery in that sense. And we've also had some not so great experiences and failures. And I thought it would be great to share this with an audience where, hey, you're entering this phase where you've got some big digital projects, a lot's riding on it. In addition to just the hard facts of what needs to be delivered, I wanted to talk a lot about the how it's going to be delivered. So that's kind of where my focus is. And I think that's something that's important to people who are embarking on these kind of projects. And also as, as partners, what we want to do to make it successful.
Yeah, and something when we look back on kind of evaluating the success of a project, a lot of that happens up front, actually, when
Yep.
we're responsible for kind of recommending different platforms and the tech stack and helping customers sort out a tricky navigation experience in assembling the cost of ownership of all of the different tooling as well. That's kind of where it starts. And how do you get things lifted off the ground with, let's say you're using a composable stack, for example, and there's 8 different systems and services all embedded in there, and they're looking to us to give them a time and a cost. And a lot of that is based on consumption, for example. And anyway, yeah, maybe you have some thoughts on getting that together.
I definitely do. And there's so much that can be covered in terms of how to make communication successful. I've kind of narrowed it down to three places or 3 points that people can lean on. And Chris, you already tapped on one. So it's not just about the what's going to be delivered, but the how. And the first one really is around, what is the question that I would challenge people to ask themselves is, what is really the total cost of ownership in a digital project? And we're not just talking about the software's licenses, subscriptions, but all the decisions that will impact it and waterfall against it. So if you're, maybe you're moving CMSs, you're maybe reducing the amount of work that needs to be done manually. How does that impact your team? We talk about like change management as a big thing. How are you preparing your organization to be trained to use these new softwares? Or, is there a plan to migrate folks from one software to the next? Because that's a big part of it. And then there's these invisible costs of ownership, like things that are related to, I would say, the software itself, but all the tangential things. So how does that impact other systems within your business? And how are those guys getting impacted? I think that really needs to be kind of discussed up front. And it's really important to have these open dialogues with your customers, because for many of them, they're embarking on this big project and undertaking. They may not have encountered this in their previous work world before, so they don't have the expertise. So you're really looking for somebody who kind of, if they don't know all the answers, to at least probe to ask the right questions. And I think from a Dotfusion perspective, we do that a lot through like our requirements gathering and other measures where we're actually taking a very deliberate approach to surfacing all these things so that we have those answers for them.
Yeah, I know something that, when we reflect back and are constantly trying to improve our ability to serve is, how do you communicate around the idea when you're bringing in new technology, new roles, new workflows, new ways of doing business, and positioning yourself as the expert, but also finding the middle ground where being the expert kind of isn't a solution for the customer to just assume you know everything they need, because a lot of internal business change in there as well. I know you're touching on change management.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're looking to do a better job as well as an agency. It's just such an important thing. How do you cover all of this?
Great tee up, because that's my second point as to what a good how to communicate better or communicate for digital success is really learning how to communicate, and I call it with non-technical stakeholders. Because in any organization, typically I would say the marketers or potentially marketing adjacent folks, maybe they're responsible for making decisions that impact the business. So say, for example, a CMO, experience officer, a CIO, they may have some knowledge in technology, but they're not expected to be the experts. That's not their jam. That's not why they were hired. But they potentially own the budget that will now impact decisions that affect their business. And so I think their role as the internal business stakeholder, they shouldn't be trying to solution the technology. My guidance to them would be, just tell your partner what is the business problem you're trying to solve. I think where I've seen clients kind of may dig themselves into a bit of a hole is that they'll maybe articulate, what solution they want. And then as a partner, we think, well, you're attached to this, how you want to do it. but ultimately they're just thinking they're trying to be helpful and, giving you some direction. I think what's best is in a clear communication is just tell your it could be your consultant, it could be your systems integrator or solutions architect. What's the challenge that I see with my audience? What's the challenge I see with my business? What is the problem I'm trying to solve? And leave that as an open thing. So I like to use, everybody knows what Waze is, right? You use Waze to kind of find out where you're going. When you're on a map and you're trying to get to a destination, if you are the CMO, you are the CIO, you input the destination. Tell me where you want to get to. As the implementer, the consultant, or whoever's solving the problem, I'm going to give you 3 different routes. You pick the route to get there. So you figure out the destination, I'll give you the path. And then that works really well because then you know that you're getting solutions that are ultimately going to service the destination that you're trying to get to. If that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I was trying to figure out how to throw traffic light warnings and toll rolls into there. But that's kind of our job, is to help them navigate from A to B with the kind of least amount of resistance and the most amount of, I guess, positive support to manage change
For sure.
in an organization. Yeah.
And going back to that analogy of Waze, there's going to be roadblocks. That's why Waze has the detour. Like it detects where the traffic's going to be. It sends off warnings like, hey, police here, or, there's an accident here. And that's kind of what as consultant or technology partner's role is like, hey, we know that if you go down this path, you can choose to take it, but you're going to run into these things. So there's no perfect solution, but it's they need to be made aware of what the pros and cons are of each path. And ultimately the decision is theirs. We're just here to facilitate. So I always say the technology in itself is not the answer. It's what you do with it, because it's here to solve a problem for you. And our role is to facilitate that.
Totally. I'm just going to come to you with some questions or observations as if I'm a CMO considering a large project. And something that is a challenge is in a large digital modernization type of project that, let's say, takes a year or so, the business goals change during the course of the delivery of the product. How do you stay ahead of that? Or what? It's not a perfect
Come
case.
On now, Chris, nobody ever changed their mind from the get-go of a kickoff to the end, right? Being cheeky here, for sure that's going to happen. I think you need to plan for change management up front, and maybe circling back, I'm going to tie that back into the third thing, which is planning for change management as part of a large project. Because if you're doing something small, that's fine. It's 3 months. Nothing's going to really significantly change. You're working on a large migration. You've got multiple stakeholders. You probably have stakeholders that may change, like in any given time. If somebody turns over, there's a new leadership team. Things like that happens more often than you think. You need to plan for change management upfront in all the large deliveries. And what I would recommend doing is really having a kind of like a module or some sort of in parallel with what I call our project status teams, to have what I like to call it is a cohesion module. So you're planning a change management track. You're identifying who all the stakeholders are. You're making sure we all understand what everybody's end goal is into this project, because by title, you might think they know what they want, but everybody has their own objective and agenda and ways of working. And as part of this change management module, you would identify processes to flag, hey, what happens if this, A, if B? And we like to preempt things. So you can do it with a process called, we use change requests, but if you have touch points every month, quarter, or whatever cadence you decide on, you kind of reset and say like, hey, has anything changed since the last time we met? Are we still on the same path? That's partly, the PM is responsible for keeping a project on track, but potentially the account lead or somebody else that's maybe in contact with the sponsors of the project may want to have touch bases as well to ensure that, we're still all moving and rowing in the same direction, because that's really, really important. So that's what we found has worked. So, and something like that is critical to like the success of a project.
Yeah, it's a real partnership in kind of getting through the project almost. It has a curve where there's a lot of activity and a lot of kind of visual enthusiasm, and then it gets into a bit of a steady push as the technology gets built around it. Next question I had, I'm also happy to share in the answer to this, because I wanted to look back at this in the future and and make it available for other customers and folks making large decisions. How do you help customers get to that final budget when you're using like composable or multiple systems? Let's say you've got a CMS, and in the case of a large pizza ordering application, we're just getting out the door here. You've got a loyalty program, there's e-commerce, there's analytics, there's several suites of licensed software that are volume priced, but the benchmark hasn't been established. And this is almost a shout out to our platform partners too, in helping us as an agency get a mechanism for some kind of price forecasting. Anyway, I thought that was a question on our customers' minds. So
so that's a really good question. I think there's two ways that I would approach it. One is, first of all, establishing what are the best platforms to get involved, because I think in the beginning, clients will say, like, we've heard about this platform. It's really great. We think it's for us. But they don't necessarily know that. Like, they maybe haven't tested it or integrated with their systems. And then the second part is when you talked about is like just volume, which I'll kind of park and talk about later. The first part would be really around like, what is the right tooling that makes sense for us? If you're looking at, say, in the example you raised, Chris, we've done projects where, we're integrating with a POS system. They want a new CMS. Now they've got like a loyalty program they want to launch, plus gift card and payment. It's all sorts of things. Where we've had success and what we've done for our clients and to reduce the amount of risk upfront is really, we recommend running a proof of concept, like just a scale, like no design skin, just connect all these things together, figure out what the use cases are that make sense to them. Like, hey, if you need it to do X, Y, Z, we'll plan it. We'll build up like a little scaled model, like called a proof of concept, and we test it, and we say like, okay, this is pretty low risk. You don't have to commit to the entire licensing or the product. Usually can get some sort of like commitment from the partners to like, hey, can you share a sandbox with me? I want to test this out. And that should be part of the partner's implementation plan if they want to secure these clients. And usually once the POCs can take anywhere from like 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, which is pretty small in the life cycle of a project. But then you have a pretty clear indication of like, hey, are these technologies going to work for your business based on the things that you want it to do? We call them use cases or stories. And that will either say, okay, let's move forward with A and C, and B doesn't even fit. And then you can cut that out of the equation right away. That, I think, has been really successful. And we've got some great technology partners that have worked with us and, plan this. And then that usually helps the end client decide like, yeah, we want to move forward with this one. And the other benefit to that is the client then goes, sells it into their internal business. Like, hey, we have something to show you. It works. Now I don't have to wait for a year and a half to see if this is successful before they commit to the dollars. Usually in those cases, the client has an easier time, let's call it internally socializing and selling that technology to the business, or in some cases, even securing more budget because they see how great it works. So I think that's really a great way to go approach it. If you're talking volume, like how much of a license you want, I think that really, and Chris, you can kind of jump in here. I think some of it is dependent on the client being good at estimating how many users or people they think they're going to run through the system. Like, hey, you're launching this new loyalty app. How many people do you think you're actually are going to redeem or download? And that's really dependent also on the marketing funds that are going to be pushing behind the projects. So one of the things that we educate our clients on is that, just because it's kind of like Field of Dreams, they think if you build it, they will come. It's not always the case. If you build it, you've got a great foundation for which they will come, but now you have to advertise it. You need billboards, you need digital ads, you need something driving to this so that a user can see how amazing the project has become and what it can do for your business.
Yeah, it's a great point around making sure that there's budget for all of that ancillary marketing activities. Just wanted to give a shout out to the folks that are tuning in on the different channels. Thanks for making time to check in. Feel free to ask us anything about web tech. Our focus today is on communications and the importance of great systems around communicating for digital delivery, especially on large enterprisey type projects. I've got a question here from Natalie. She's wondering, like, how do we have any recommendations essentially to prepare for unexpecteds, hitting roadblocks, just challenges that no one could foresee
Yeah.
during a project delivery.
I'll go back to one of the points that I mentioned that is really critical to project success is just planning for change management. And part of that thread involves really, I would say, mapping out the what ifs. I think sometimes where we get into trouble, and we've encountered this ourselves, is that we don't try to project all the gray areas and that potential, like, okay, these are some potential landmines that we can land on. And then identifying ahead of time, like, okay, if A happens, what's our escalation path, or what ways are we going to go? So when you actually land on that mine, or like if it comes up, you've already got a decision, or like you've already agreed with the team, with the stakeholders, like how you're going to address it. And a lot of it is really around preparing in advance. And I think it seems so simple and cliche, but we don't do it all the times. And I know, like, we've been kind of like, what's the word? Like, we've done this before, and this is how we've learned from our mistakes. It's like, okay, we know this happens. Let's prepare in advance for it. So there are things that are now part of our habitual our nature. Like, we always do requirements gathering for big projects now. So requirements gathering, some people out there might call it discovery or scoping. We'll take it a step further than that. If we know it's a really large project, we want the clients to come to us and say, like, let's sit down half a day, one day, whatever, depending on how big your project is. This is part of like the proposal that will come to with them, and say, you've said you want this. Have you thought about all these things? So we use our iceberg analogy, which is, a client only sees like the tip of the iceberg, which is the 10%. But they're like, we have this dream project. We have this great app. We have this plan integration. We're like, okay, have you thought about the 500 other things that goes on and needs to be thought of before you get to this place? And I think for some folks, it seems like, oh, this is very intense. It seems a little bit onerous, but these are the things that you do ahead to avoid those landmines. Because when we get to them, we're like, oh, we already thought about that. This is what we're going to do. And it also helps get clarity for the client, because in those sessions, we're typically bringing in multiple stakeholders. So it's never just the marketer, because, who we like to bring in, who's going to touch this end product, this application. You'll have representatives from operations, sales, marketing, potentially finance, depending on what the project is. And we like to hear, okay, let's go around the room and like understand, like, what is everybody expecting to get out of this project? Because that will surface a lot of things. And what's interesting is sometimes it'll surface tooling that's already available in parts of the organization that this guy didn't know about. And then like, well, we don't want to spend extra dollars. Why don't we just leverage what's already there? So there's definitely like lots of opportunity and lots of benefit for getting people in that room to have this conversation up front. So
interesting.
I hope the people on the call, like, is that helpful? I mean, you can do this at a smaller scale. You don't have to do like a whole workshop, but like if you have a smaller project team, you can kind of run these on their own. But we facilitate a lot of these, and we get a lot of great feedback from clients saying that, it was fun, it was easy to do, and like it really got them thinking and inspired about their projects.
Cool. You have a beautiful rainbow forming on your screen. And
amazing.
Off right.
Because it's like
you're part of the world here. Yeah, you just brought up something interesting, and I can't help but throw in a slight sailing metaphor. I just happen to have this book here, the Annapolis Book of Seamanship. And basically, if you take the idea of going out to sea as a voyage and the preparation of a big digital product or project, there's kind of one key element to that's common in all disasters, and that's kind of a rushed and ill-prepared departure.
Yeah.
And just one of the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks at Dotfusion is just some curiosity around this kind of pattern that like 99% of the projects have a rush feeling to get started. And I'm just wondering about that, where inevitably there's a rush to get started, and projects take a year. Like you almost don't.
Sure.
Slow down at the beginning, you wouldn't notice it. And I'm just wondering about, maybe do some experimenting and creating some new paradigms of like slow start, faster finish kind of thing.
Sure. I think lots of analogies apply here. I would say the adage "measure twice, cut once" is like very applicable. I think if I could caution or steward people to think about things is that the more upfront planning you can do and making sure that you've got all your I's dotted and T's crossed, you can accelerate, or what we call increased velocity in the actual delivery process. Where it becomes a problem is, like you said, people are rushing to get it done because they think like, oh my God, I have a budget, or I have to finish this project because I've committed to delivering it by X. I would say, let's take some time to really get clear on what it is that you want. And there's always things, once you find out what they need, there's always ways to kind of scale back the actual, I guess, like what I say, the requirements of the delivery to what is a manageable and feasible way to get it done in the time that they want. There's always outcomes. The levers are time, resources, money, right? We never sacrifice on quality. So that is like 100% not a thing for our team. I can't speak for other agencies, but if you've got time, that's great. Time is always good. If you've got extra resources or funds that you can allocate, that is also good. So there are a lot of tools to help our clients really plan well upfront. Requirements gathering is one of them, just running workshops, asking the right questions. As we say, we're not the experts in your business, you are, but we are the experts in surfacing the questions that will get you to the right answers, because the answers are there. Like, what you want, what your users want. And you don't need to know the technology of how to get there, but just tell us your destination. Same thing. Proof of concepts, things like that. Sorry, going back, was there anything else that I didn't mention? I'm trying to circle back because I'm now saying stuff that I already mentioned before, but I just really wanted to reinforce that the preparation is clear. And I like having, like, I don't want to call them side conversations, but like, if you can get your client in a situation where you're like, tell me what this project means to you beyond the, like, on the page, you want to deliver this, the how. It's usually a significant, like, something significant. We've had clients where we've helped them migrate a site from WordPress to their existing CMS. And being on site with these clients, we found out that, like, this has been a pet project or something close to the heart for 7 years. 7 years, that's what it meant to them. So when you know the emotional experience behind what they're looking to accomplish, it's really helpful because we can get bought into that. We can get behind beliefs, and we're really stoked to help clients to kind of realize their dreams of what they want to accomplish. So I would say, like, it's okay to be sharing things that you think may not be relevant to the project, but that have meaning to you. Like, we work with, like, nonprofits. We work with like a lot of companies that work with the user community. Like, they're about either finding affordable housing or supporting people in their journey to Christ and finding faith. There's lots of different ways that you can kind of weave that into as part of your project plan. And then it kind of keeps you guys on the same North Star, in addition to the requirements. You've got this, I think, emotional, purposeful, meaningful North Star that you're both working towards.
Awesome. Man, time flies. Once again, thanks to everyone who's made a moment in their day to listen in on the various channels. Thanks, Natalie and Marie, for making this all happen. Janice, thanks for joining us today and taking a bit of time out of your day.
Super fun.
Anyone out there listening live or in the future, if you do want to chat about how do you get a big digital project done, we are at your service. Also, just a heads up, we've got a really great schedule of guests throughout the next year. And we'll be doing some really cool platform demos covering content, commerce, data, and AI platforms. We're bringing that online in a few months. And well, thanks again for joining. I know our time is up. And we will be back next week, I believe, to talk about some AI chatbot platforms, and looking forward to doing our best to share information and be a part of this kind of web tech community. So thanks again, everyone. Signing off until next week. Over and out.